Hi everyone, welcome back to Language Friendly Classroom Tips. This is session 4 and part 6 of it, and now we're going to be focusing on differentiating between literal and inference or problem-solving questions. Okay, so first of all, what is the difference? A literal question is a question in which you can find the answer stated directly within the text. A problem-solving question, however, or an inference question, is one in which clues from the text are then combined with the student's own knowledge or background knowledge in order to infer, predict, conclude, or make a judgment. Okay. Whenever I'm working with students, I always teach them to try and immediately recognize whether a question is literal or a problem-solving question. And I tell them that they can recognize problem-solving questions by looking for key phrases such as do you think, do you feel, or do you know. So for example, what do you think, who do you think, where do you think, or why do you think? Most students, both those with learning difficulties as well as those students who cope quite well, but tend to just struggle with problem solving. The reason they struggle with these questions or to answer these questions is they just don't know how to answer them. And they kind of go around in circles in terms of understanding and knowing what to put down. So by giving them this formula for answering the problem solving questions, I find it really sort of, it equips them to feel more confident to attempt to tackle them. So I explain to them that problem solving questions consist of two parts. The do you think, the do you feel, or the do you know part, I call it the brain clue. And it's the reason it's a brain clue is it's based on the background knowledge that you have in your brain. Example, I think whatever. The second part of the answer to the problem solving question is where you list the specific clues that you found within the text that back up or support your answer. And I like to call these clues the text clues or the book clues. So you say, I think, ... and then you say, because, ... And the because bit is always the clues from the text that you found. And these clues are mark dependent depending on how many points the tester or examiner requires. So if the tester wants 2 clues from the text, it's going to be worth 2 points, and the I think bit will always be worth 1 mark. So the total of that question would basically be worth 3 marks. Okay, so here's just a simple analogy that I always use with the students, and I find it's really basic, but it helps them to understand the differences. So let's just say that the text said James is in year 1 in SCCC. A literal question would simply say, what year is James in? And you can see the answer is stated directly within that sentence. A problem-solving question would say, how old do you think James is? I explained to the students that to answer this question, they need to take the text clue, which says James is in year 1, and combine it with their brain clue, the background knowledge of knowing that a student who starts school is most likely, in year 1, is most likely 6 to 7 years of age, to answer the question, I think James is 6 or 7 years old. That is your brain clue, combined with because he is in year 1 at school, and that's your text clue. The clue coming directly from the text. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So the types of problem-solving questions that we first got an example of an inference question. So here within a simple sentence or text, we've got psychologists are professionals who provide evidence-based support, guidance, and counseling to people with mental health and learning difficulties. Okay, the question, an inference question would say, what kind of person do you think a psychologist should be? And it's worth 3 marks. So I would get the student to think about those marks and think about the fact that 1 mark is going to be for their brain clue, what they think, and 2 marks are going to be for the text clue, which means they need to find 2 points or 2 clues within the text to back up what they think. So they've said, so in this case, the student has said, I think a psychologist should be a good listener who is kind, caring, and supportive. That was their brain clue, but now they're going to say why. with a text clue. So they're going to say, because you would require these skills in order to provide sufficient evidence-based support, guidance, and counseling to people with mental health and learning difficulties on a daily basis. And within those text clues, you can find there were 2 points that were found. Okay, here's an example of prediction, and I explained to the students that prediction is usually where you have to predict or think about what is going to happen next, or say what's going to happen next based on clues within the story. So here within this text, we've got John was petrified as he lay in bed on that dark night. He was inside his bedroom, tucked up in bed, and the alarm was activated. He could hear unfamiliar voices outside who were talking to one another, but he was too frightened to get out of bed. He knew the alarm panic button was next to him, but he wasn't sure whether this situation was warranted pressing it. Suddenly he heard the sound of window glass breaking in the dining room. And the question is, how do you think John may have responded when he heard the sound of glass breaking? Here the student is needing to predict what John is going to do. So, the brain clue would say, I think John would have reached for the panic button and pressed it. And now they've got to back it up. It's only worth 2 points, 2 marks this question. So it's 1 mark for what they think and 1 mark for a clue from the text, which means they only need 1 clue from the text. So because the breaking glass in the dining room would have alerted him to the fact that the unfamiliar voices outside were trying to break into his house. And that is the text clue. Okay, the next type of problem-solving question is concluding or conclusion, and here is an example below. The text says, the science experiment suddenly caused a large explosion, which resulted in one of the windows within the laboratory to shatter. Question, what conclusion can you make regarding this experiment within the school setting? It's worth 3 marks. So within this question, you would have 1 mark for what you can conclude, which is your brain clue, and 2 marks for text clues, which means you need to find 2 points within the text to back up your answer. So in this answer, we started off with the text clue. So we said, since the experiment caused a large explosion, 1 point, which broke one of the windows, 2 points, I can conclude that the experiment was too dangerous to be implemented by students within the school setting, and that was their brain clue. Okay, and the next type of problem-solving question that we've got is an example of judgment. And I explained to the students that you can get 2 types of judgment that you will be required to make. The first kind will be a judgment based on specific facts that are presented within the text. And the other type of judgment would be a judgment based on an author's opinion within the text. So just to focus on a judgment based on facts, in the text below we've got Mother Teresa was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for her dedication towards supporting the needs of the sick and poor internationally. The judgment question is, what kind of person do you think Mother Teresa was? And you've gone and your brain clue, you've said, I think Mother Teresa was a loving and caring person. And then you have got your text clue where you've backed up your answer and you said, because she was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for her dedication in supporting the needs of the sick and the poor internationally. Okay, here we've got a judgment based on the opinion that is reflected by the author within the text. And in order to sort of decipher or detect differences between a factual piece of text versus an opinionated piece of text, I always get the students to look and highlight words that show opinions, such as I feel, I believe, it was so much fun. Words that show that it's depicting the author's opinion. And by realizing whether a piece of text is an opinion or a factual piece of information, it enables them to know what kind of judgments they're making. Are they making a judgment based on fact, or are they making a judgment based on opinion? So below here, we've got obviously some kind of review on a rugby union game, and it says, the rugby match between the Sharks and the Reds on the weekend was very slow and long-winded right up until the final few minutes, when the awesome locals, so awesome is obviously an opinion word, managed to put the regressing Sharks in their place and score the few points needed in order to win. And the question says, do you feel that the author is a fond supporter of the sharks? And it's worth 3 marks, which means they're going to have 1 mark for their brain clue, 2 marks for the text clues, which means they need 2 clues from the text to support their answer. So the student has written, no, I feel that the author of this article is more likely a red supporter and therefore not fond of the sharks, and that's the brain clue, because he refers to the sharks as regressing, that's your first point, and needing to be put in their place. That's your second point, and those are your text clues. Right, that brings us to an end of question answering. Thanks so much.